last talk. I'm a freelance developer who's been using Drupal since 4.6. I'm based in Amsterdam, which means I can do this in Dutch or English, but not German, I'm afraid. But I'm originally from London, which means I can sometimes speak a bit too fast in English. So if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. Just sort of wave your hand like that. That's fine. I'll see. But this talk I did in Frankfurt. Who actually saw this in Frankfurt? Nobody. Okay, because since then I've moved some of the more codey bits to the end, like after the final slide, so we can go into more detail if we want, but we can also keep it slightly more straightforward. So just to get some idea about how quickly I want to go through the bits of it, who here actually ever writes code? So only less than half, but so who would consider themselves a site builder more than a coder? That's also about so the rooms were split about 50-50. Okay. Who has done anything with custom entities in 8 and in 7? Right, so if you manage to do it in 7, this is going to be way too easy for you. In Drupal 8, it's just got so much more simple and so much easier. Anyway, so I'll go from scratch. The main examples that I do aren't too codey and more configuration-like, and we'll explain how to do it. And then for other people later on, we can talk about how you can actually deal with the API or actually add in fields and things like that. But it's starting from base level. So let's talk about what and when we'd want to use custom entities. So why should you use them? Well, not when you actually want nodes. Nodes come with lots of cool features, and you've got all the access control. In the future, there's going to be generalized access control. There's still an issue that's been ongoing, particularly with the groups people, to add sort of generic access control. But at the moment, if you want access control on that sort of fine grain level, use nodes. Taxonomy terms. You actually want to use taxonomy terms sometimes, like when you want a hierarchy. So if you want that hierarchy, it's taxonomy terms or book, I guess. Or if you want media, then we've just got into core, really good media handling entities which do lots of additional features to keep track of the assets and so forth, and look after the metadata and have hooks to pull in metadata. So don't use it then. And don't use it when you want users. Users are a special type of entity. They can do things like log in. So that's when you don't want to use them. But for most, and yes, don't use a custom entity that you write when someone else has already written it for you and it's in contract. But for the rest of the time, actually, a custom entity should be your default fallback. I was doing a bit of a survey about this, and lots of sort of more lots of developers just sort of went, yes, it's my default, unless I want the node access control, unless I want a lookup table and hierarchy, the taxonomy term, then I just want the features that are required and not all the extra stuff. So if you want, and this is the one that came up most often, I did a little survey of mainly the people in the Drupal UK channel in IRC, which is very friendly, and this was the one that came up all the time. There's loads of occasions where you want very simple, reusable bits of content. And sometimes you actually want that you want even more control over that content. You want to put it in. You only want some administrators once in a while to change the content. So you can put it into version control. So it can be a config entity. It's got a title, it's got a body, it might have some numeric field on it, but otherwise it's very simple. You want to know when it's changing. There's only a few people that change it, but you want lots of administrators to be able to reuse them. So they can just pick them by an entity reference field, or you can use paragraphs and say that that particular entity type can be referenced. So things like that was one of the examples that everyone came up with. Also, there's one problem when you use nodes all the time. If you use nodes all the time, it's all in content. And so you have lots of different content types, but the different types of content type have different places. So you want to keep configuration in one place under structure. You want to get your content separated out so locations don't look like events. If you want to structure your content in a better way, it makes it much easier. Have you ever tried to separate out content types on the content page? You're having to rebuild new parts, and we'll look how easy it is to change your admin backend, the menu structure, the paths, if you're actually in control of your entities. And the sort of polar opposite of simple entities is when you want to do something and be in complete control. And if you make your own entities, and this is probably the more advanced end of it, the example there is one that I did. We had to have a subscription system which was connected to a CRM. So every time you're hooked into the API, so every time there's a save, a pre-save, you can connect to the CRM, you can link the data in, and those subscriptions were connected to users but are not on a one-to-one relationship. So you need much more configurability. So simple entities, when you don't want access control, you don't want revisions, you don't want translatability, you don't want all the extra hooks that Node gives you, all the way through to when you want absolutely everything and you want the control. So every other time, that's the good one to use. So, and the example I'm going to be showing in this is the locations example, which is one that I've had to do a couple of times, and when I asked in the Drupal UK channel, locations was another one that came up. So this is a geographic location that you would then associate with other pieces of content, like an event, or like an event. So it's something that you're going to reuse. It has specific fields. It has an address. It has things like it has a geo point on it. So it's a very specific type of content, but it could have more than one type. So just like you have an article or a page for your nodes, you can have a location, and some of them have opening times, and some of them have got other fields on them, and you want different fields on the different types of location. So that's why it seemed to come up as one that was quite commonly done. Okay, so it's easy. What we're going to do is make that location entity that I'm talking about in code. We're going to configure it. We're going to make those bundles that I was talking about so that we can have different fields on different types of locations. I'm going to post a couple of locations and build a view using it, and we're going to do it all in under 7 minutes. It's a video. I know it's under 7 minutes. With explanation, and then afterwards I'll go into detail about how you can actually customize and change things. But this is pretty much all from the admin interface of Drupal. So it's not much coding, but there's a bit. So you need a little bit of command line, but not so much. So it's still site building task. So the tools you will need. Have everyone come across Drupal console? Hands up. Again, about half the room. Okay, so Drupal console is, there's Drush and Drupal console. They're two command line tools that are very useful for working with Drupal on the command line. But the most useful thing that Drupal console does is building this boilerplate code. So it's a great way of rolling out code really quickly that you can use, build on. And personally, I still use Drush for everything else. I know some Drupal console works more like Symfony console. So if you've ever done any Symfony work, most Symfony things come with a console. Drush is integrating itself into that. And what you'll see, and this is the Drush and Drupal console come with this Drupal Composer Pack project. So when you see me typing in the video, you'll see I'm typing a path that goes a couple of directories above the directory I'm in. And that's because Drupal Composer makes the web directory, which has got your website in it, and it has a bin directory which has the correct version of Drush and the correct version of Drupal console for that particular version of Drupal, which is kind of useful. So that's why you'll see that I'm doing that. So, 6 minutes and 50 seconds, we will have our entity, encode, and everything. So, if we go, there we go. So, it's been about a month since I've seen this, so there's me going up into that directory just outside the web root to be able to run the Drupal console. Is that visible for everybody, or is it a bit? Okay, so here we go. So you can see I'm just showing all the commands that it does do, and you can interact with the database, but it's all this generate stuff that makes the boilerplate text, which is the most interesting stuff in the console program, and that's what we use to generate our entity. So, our one command, and I review these commands afterwards in the next slide. So I'm just going to generate a module to put the entity into first, which I'll call, rather stupidly, location entity module, but it would have been better just to call it location. Yeah. Anyway, and I think I accept all the defaults for almost everything except the theme, because the entity also makes some theme files. So if you, the theme template, if you accept it, you then have to merge the two. And it's quick. It's very simple, but it's quicker not to. And now I generate a content entity. This is because I want to add the fields onto it in the UI. And I accept all the defaults, which means it actually makes quite a lot of files. If you make a simple content entity, it's only 15 files, but I accept translatability and revisions on it, and so it makes a lot more files. If you just do a config entity, it only makes 9 files, which is, way less. I also accept the path admin structure, which we will change later on. But you could just set it already here. So yes, it makes 34 files, but if you don't want revisions and you don't want translatability, you get much less files. Anyway, so there was nothing there before, but now if I enable the module, notice I do it with Drush rather than, and you can see it's under admin structure, it's added both the bundles, which is the different types of location, and it's added the administration page for administering them. But that's it. We're off the command line. It's 2 lines. You've created your entities. It's done. So I'm going to create the first type of location, which is for museums, and I'm going to add fields onto them. Just so this is just as you would do with anything else, any other type of entity type that we've brought in. And so museums have opening times. We'll keep it nice and simple, so it's just a text field. And I'll make another bundle in a second just to show the difference. So, and a stadium doesn't have opening times, but it does have teams that play at it. So I'll add a field, just again a simple text field for that. Clubs. Teams, clubs. And you can have multiple clubs playing at one team. So, and then that's done. So now, and this is one of the nice things. So we'll see we have actually got complete control over the form, but the form's already made for you. If anyone comes, this is normal to us Drupal people. But if you come from a different framework background, you have to make the forms for all these entities, and it's just sort of like, no, it's there. So yes, it has. And I made this presentation for Frankfurt. So that particular stadium has 2 teams. The first one is one of the high-ranking women's clubs, and the other one is some team that I've never heard of. And then museum, and post that as well. And this is me trying to type German very slowly. And you'll see this is the default list that it rolls out of with the box. You can make a view, and then you can have a nice admin page. But by default, that's what console rolls out for you as the admin page. And yes, so you can also administer the display of the thing. So just like you would do, you can have different display modes. All of that works. And just to finish off, we'll make a view of the content. So again, views just works. Whereas you used to in Drupal 7 have to declare it all separately and add everything. There's no need anymore. So I'll create a page so it's nice and simple, quick. And you could show fields, but just for this presentation, make it much quicker. Just show the entity. And of course, you'll see the display mode with the hidden fields. And I think I saved this twice unnecessarily. And then just go to locations. And there it is. So in that time, we've created the entity, we've created the different bundles, we've added the fields, we've got the views. It's sort of like, why else would you do anything else if that's what you need? And then you can add on specific geo fields or whatever. So those were the 2. That's the only bit that you need to do on the command line to get that, and you can export the config, and you can do everything else from the UI if you want to. And like I say, there are the 2 different types of entity, which I've mentioned and alluded to already: content or config. So a config entity, if you don't know, it's just simpler. It gets exported into your config sync directory. You can put it into version control, but you can't do all that stuff with fields that I just did. It doesn't support the field API. If you add a field, it's going to be much more basic. You'll have to do it in code. You can add number fields and things like that, but then you're going to have to write the form as well to support your fields. And you're going to have to define the schema yourself as well. Whereas content entity will go into whatever database backend or whatever you're using. You can add fields onto it. You've got the full field API. So it's much simpler to do from the UI, but you then don't have the version control to follow it. So, once we've got that, we'll just show you a little bit of the power that you can have to customize it. So, I've done this presentation again in a group with some designers and some site builders, and these were the things that they came up with most. I've also got, like I say, afterwards, an example of like putting a field on in code instead of in config in the UI, which is really cool because actually then your database structure is even cleaner. So I can show that one afterwards, or I can show bits about hooking into the API where the post save is. But the things that came up most often that people building sites wanted is sort the path out, sort the menu out, change the menu, and goodbye hook form alter. So, I do have to explain where the code is. So, this is what it produced for you. This is the actual entity itself. And so you do have to kind of find it. So, how many people have any idea of OOP programming? How many people, actually more importantly, how many people use an IDE? So, not a text editor, but have PHP Storm or something like that. Okay, still about half the room. Right, so to do lots of these things, you have to be able to find the files. And the files fit into a special sort of structure. This is so that they can be automatically loaded. It makes sense. Even though when you're looking at the directory, particularly if you aren't really a coder, it's a bit obscure. It's sort of like, why is this, underneath this, how far I have to go down. But the rules for it, which is called PSR4, make it standard way of loading these files. So it does make sense. But so most of the files you'll find, so this is the module, and we'll edit some files in there. And this is the entity itself. So it's in a src source directory, and then there's a subdirectory in there called entity, which has got the entities in it, and then the location entity is what we're going to be editing now. If you use an IDE, which I'm old school, I still use Vim, and it's highly customized, and it does all that auto loading, and I can load classes by hitting a thing, and it takes forever to configure, and I wouldn't advise it to anyone. So yeah, if you're just getting started, use PHP Storm or Eclipse or whatever, because it will make finding these files really easy. If you want to know more about the auto loading, that's what it is. Anyway, so let's do the first thing. So we'll change the path. So on that file that I was just talking about, which is the definition of the entity, there's this comment at the top. You can tell it's a comment because that's the standard way that PHP defines a comment, except this comment isn't just a comment. It's a special one that gets read by the code. And this is something that's come out of Symfony. In Symfony itself, you can actually do stuff with annotations and YAML, and you can do this configuration all over the place. But for entities in Drupal 8, you have to do it in the annotation. That's just the way we've implemented it in Drupal. And so here, it tells you, this is the bit that says it's a special bit of comment. And yeah, there's lots of stuff in there which we'll look at again when we look at the form. We also define where the form is, but it's those links that we want to look at. So if I go to there, if you remember from the video, I agreed that everything would be under admin structure. But really, I want the content, the types, so the fact that there's a museum and a stadium and whatever else, to be configured under structure, because that's the kind of thing that admins do, and it gets exported to code. Whereas I want the administrators of the site, the editors, to add new locations, so I want them to do that under content. So I want to change the path from admin structure to admin content. And so all I need to do is edit this file and clear the cache, and the path will change. There's the example. So you can see the path has changed to admin content, but you can also see that it's still under structure. So I've changed the path, but I've not changed the menu. So I haven't actually moved. I've moved the path, and when you click on it, the breadcrumb will say admin content location entity list, but it won't actually have moved there when you look at the menu. So, really, not the menu. So we want to change the menu too. These files are easier to find. The configuration is in YAML, and how many people know what I'm talking about? I guess it's going to be the same hands again. How many people know what I'm talking about when I talk about YAML? Okay, so it's a really simple, it is the same hand. It's a really simple configuration format. And these ones, as you can see, they're just at the top level of the directory. The names aren't very clear because it's yellow and white, but it's links action, links menu, and links task, and I'll look at each one of them. So this is what I mean, it's really simple. It's just colon, and then a list. And the bit that we want, let's highlight it and it might be more readable. There we go. Is in the menu, it's under admin structure. And I want to change that to admin content. And then it will move. Now, the question is, how on earth do you know where or what to put there? And my simple answer to that one is, I'll just find something else on the page and have a look at its menu.yaml file, and you'll see what the parent is. If you want to do it properly, you could actually look at the top level in Drupal, there's something called a routing YAML file that actually has all the routes, and it will tell you where the things are. Or, and this is if you're completely lost, you can actually add a subscriber to the root alter and then just dump everything and have a look at it. And I think Devel module might now actually have something where it puts a Devel tab, and then you can actually, without having to dump it yourself, you can actually just look at all the routes that have been defined. But the easiest way, just find another, you know the node module has something on the content page. Go to the node module, open up its menu.yaml file and copy and paste. Anyway, so change that, and then it should be there, shouldn't it? But it's not. It is. Welcome to Drupal. So there's different types of menus. So you've moved it in the menu, but the content page doesn't have a landing page like the structure does, which lists the menu. So you can actually see the menu if you're in the thin format version, and you get the side menu. There's the full menu. You also notice on this page that the comments, there's got a tab and a menu item. The location entity I've added into the menu. Files in core has a tab but no menu item. There are moves afoot to change this. Anyway, so we also want to have a tab, and the tabs are called local tasks. This is probably more a hangover to how things were structured in previous versions of Drupal. But the point is they don't have to be a tab. It just happens that we always display them as a tab. So in the menu, in location entity links task, you have exactly the same thing, and I can change the base route, and then there it is. Okay, so that was the path and the menu, and the other thing that people always said they want to be able to access, change, is the form. So previously, or if you're doing this with a node, you have to do a hook form alter, and then you have to detect whether it's particularly the bundle or the type of node that you want and all the rest of it. But Console has rolled out a form for us, and in that annotation it tells you where to find it. So this will be in your module directory, source, and then a subdirectory called form, which has got form entities in it, and then the location entity form. So, and there's the form, and you'll see, so this is where a bit of OOP help, a bit of object orientation programming helps. So this actually just extends the standard default content entity form. And in fact, if you look inside here, all that the console module has added this for is to add some stuff about revisions, which you didn't need to turn on, of course. And so whether it's new or not. And all the rest of the form, the fact that the fields magically appeared on the form, the fact that it saves correctly and it goes somewhere and all the rest of it is actually in the content entity form. But anything that you want to change, you can just do here now. You don't need to hook in or do anything. Just change it there. And it's much cleaner, it's much easier to understand for the next developer who comes along because they can just see it and you've overridden it.
Why doesn't the content entity form take care of revisions, the base form?
I actually think there is another, it doesn't because revisions are an extension. I actually think there is a content revisions entity form that does do it. There definitely is in Node. So, in fact, that should be done as a common thing, but on a form that extends the standard content entity form. And then the config one is slightly different. So, yes, we've created the custom entities, we've configured and used them, we've worked out where to find the classes, we've looked at the annotation, which is the configuration at the top, we've changed the path, so the thing that's in the URL and the thing that's used to work out the breadcrumb. Change the menu structure so you can put it wherever it makes sense, which is kind of one of the reasons that you do want that control over a custom entity anyway. And extended the forms. So, before I go more code, are there any questions with all of that? Because certainly for half people it's all going to be quite new. Yes?
Is there any way to create own properties? Like a second create date or something else to these things?
So that depends. Yeah, so that. There we go. So that immediately brings us on to one of the slides up at the end, which is in if it's a content entity, there's a base fields definition, and you add fields there, and they work. There's no difference. If you can just add a simple number, created date, or whatever there, or you can add a full proper field. I don't know if I've got a slide open with. No, I haven't got a slide open with a config version of the same, but there is to do that, you have to, like I say, you have to define it in the schema, and then add it to the form yourself. But yeah, so if you add a field here, the reason I say it works like a property and you can just define a very simple numeric one is because if it's a simple single value, so I've even added a geo field and it's actually on for people that care about these sort of things. Anything I add that's a single value, and I add in code, not in the UI, actually goes into the table of the entity. So normally, if I added the geo field in the UI, it makes another table, and then when you load the entity, it loads the title from here, but it loads the geo field from another table. Whereas I put this one on as single, I could have just added another timestamp, but here I've added a full geo field, but it's actually on this table. So the answer is, if it's a content entity, add it in here. If it's a config entity, add it in the schema. And here, this will automatically make the form correctly, and a config entity, you'll have to edit the form to make it visible to anyone. So yeah, that was the field I added. And my answer to the question about where you find all this information is, usually I add it in the UI, export it and copy the code out of it, then you know what all the settings are, because otherwise, who knows what settings it needs without reading the code. Yeah.
Do you know of a way to make field added in code, not as a required code? Because right now, I have this wrong. When you create base field definitions, it always sets in the database. It sets it to it's required. It cannot be a null. And what we kind of do, we kind of change it on the table in the database to make it. Yeah, how do you do that? You have a yes on all of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Where do you say that?
So let's have a look.
So you set the default value to that.
And if it has a default value, then it can.
Very nice.
So I think that's the reason for that one. Okay. Any others? Any others on, stuff previously as well? Is the idea of doing this on the command line kind of fine to people? Okay.
How do you think to interact with workflows, for example, with the content entity types? If you have, for example, a Drupal site where you have to register users and their companies, how would you create the companies first, the organizations maybe, and how would you add the users to the companies? Would you create the companies or organizations by entity types, or would you extend user management, or how would you do it, for example?
Again, though, it sounds slightly like my subscriptions example, where there were separate subscriptions, and then it was an entity reference. In that case, actually from the subscription to the users, but your one might be users to the company.
Yeah.
But then, depending on what functionality you need, you might also want to look at groups.
Groups.
Module. If it depends on what you want. If you just want to relate the two together, then create a custom entity that has the fields that you require, and then have them. Well, if you already know what the companies are going to be, you can have them entered already, and then when the user registers or the user is being entered into the system, you could just have an entity reference and select which company that they are a member of or work for or whatever, And then elsewhere you could use that information to know that people are a member of that company, so they should see it presented in this manner or whatever your uses are. But if you wanted to do stuff so there are separate sections of the site for the different members of different companies, then that's some of the stuff that they're building into group module, which is a simplified, at the moment, version of organic groups that existed in 7. Which means that you can then have content that people can edit because they're a member of the group and things like that. So sometimes someone's already done it for you, sometimes you want something more specific.
Do you do it this way all the time now?
Like several people said in the Drupal UK channel, it's kind of the default. You know, if there's a simple entity that just wants to be reused and seen or whatever, so it's not a paragraph on its own. You actually want to reuse it, or you want to display it here and there or whatever, or it just doesn't want revisions and it doesn't want all the complexity. Roll something out specific. As soon as there's anything that isn't a content type, as in an article or whatever. So another example was they were products, but they weren't being sold on the site. So it's not worth rolling commerce out. But products have different features. So we could have made a node for a node type for one type of product, a node type for another type of product, because they're just showcasing the products, and they could have sat there with the articles about the products and the pages and all the rest of it. But it's equally easy just to separate them out, and you can have nodes that are articles, and you can have products, and it makes the database structure more clear. It makes the admin interface more clear, and it's as easy to do as rolling out another node type.
Sorry for this question if I came in late. You're creating entity types.
Yeah.
Do you use them through a default bundle then? Does that make sense?
I think you wanted the video.
I probably just missed it then.
Yeah,
okay.
But yeah, so
console creates an entity and a default bundle.
well, right. So when it rolls out, the default is that bundles are switched on, I think. But you can actually make it so that there are no bundles, and you can't even make them. There is just one, like a user.
Yeah.
There's only one type of user. There's no bundles. In fact, there is a bundle. It's called user.
Yeah.
But there's only one.
Yeah.
Which, if you know there is only going to be one of them, fine. But the chances are, like my location example, you're going to want to have different fields on different versions of the thing.
Oh,
so,
yeah, okay.
and then, but you can make the bundles. You say it's bundleable, but you actually make you can add the different types of bundles yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so then you get a layer up on the usual abstraction, because then you can have product and the product types of the bundles.
Yeah.
So then you get an extra kind of a lot more freedom than you would starting at node level.
Yeah, because then you just have product types as different node types, and you have your different page types and whatever else, so it kind of mixes it up together, basically. Okay, so thank you very much then.